The great physician. You can, as you hear Galdius sing that, ladies and gentlemen, you can look at his website, GaldiusMusic.com, and hear the entire story about where that song came from, because Galdius had several surgeries he had to have on his hands, and here's a guitarist needing to use his hands, and just hearing him sing that song is powerful because this is somebody who experienced God's healing in an incredible way. And any of the producers who are out there, any of the promoters, record labels, Galdius, he deserves to be signed. Am I right on that, Steve?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. But I'm going to throw you a curveball. You're always throwing stuff at me and expecting me to respond on the spot, and be witty and so forth. But I'm going to throw something at you, and it's actually a serious question.
Oh.
I think we would have some people who would listen, who would say, I don't think he's such a great physician after all, because I have been suffering from X for a number of years, and I've been praying, and I've been faithful, and I've been reading my Bible, and he hasn't healed me. Or he hasn't healed my mother or my friend who's been suffering for a long time, especially with some physical ailment. What do you as a pastor say to the person who is hurting in that way?
Well, there's various responses, and I don't know that there's a correct one. But, that's something that I think we do need to dive into tonight. But before we do that, I do have a shout out for our listeners. Listeners, I have a podcast I would like to introduce you to, and believe it or not, there are more podcasts out there. The Christian Men at Work podcast is one that I strongly would recommend. This is their description. If you want to live out your Christian faith and experience true joy and purpose in every part of your life, including and especially where you spend most of your life in your daily work, check out the Christian Men at Work podcast, where you'll be inspired by interviews with everyday guys from all walks of life and different vocations, as well as work-focused messages to motivate you and help you in your journey and walk with Jesus. So ChristianMenAtWork.com is where you can go and subscribe to their podcast. Highly recommended.
And that has nothing to do with Men at Work, the great 80s band?
When I first saw it, it was really a double take I had to look at it. But I think, I don't know this for sure, but I think it's kind of a play on word regarding that. But it's the image and everything that they portray as far as the symbol of a man at work, like when you're driving down the road on the podcast itself, it definitely connects with that. But yeah, I would say it's a complete different theme than that movie, of course.
Gotcha.
Right. So back to your question, which I think this podcast, the Christian Men at Work podcast, ties into your question, because you're asking how much of our faith is real. And how much of what we believe is real? Because, a podcast, somebody's doing a podcast interviewing men about how do you show your faith in the workplace, in the secular world? Why? Because the world is saying there is no God. You're crazy if you think there's a God. How would a loving God let all this horrible stuff happen? Such as what you mentioned, the times when God does not heal. And I think one of the answers to that is that one thing we do know for certain is that God does not heal everyone of every disease every time. That's just plain flat out obvious. If he did, Lazarus would still be alive. So
that's a fair point.
When he raised Lazarus from the dead, one thing that people tend to forget about, Lazarus did die eventually. Now, if that didn't happen, that's fine. Tweet us, let us know. He's the oldest man in the world, but he did die, right? So there's something more of, like in the New Testament when Jesus did it, it was more to show that his power and a testimony more than what it was to just simply do what the person asking wanted. Because how many times did people go away from Jesus disappointed because he had crowds coming, and there were several that didn't get the chance or didn't
Well,
get the
I
opportunity.
I also think, though, it points out something that is, it's not pleasant maybe initially to accept. People don't want to accept it, but that your healing may not actually be the most important thing. And I know that really, and I would never say that to a person who was in the moment of pain. Okay, I'm not going. I would never say that to the person in that moment. But God knows what is the most important thing regarding each individual person and how each individual life fits into his overall kingdom. I don't know why he chose to heal this blind person, but not that blind person. Why did he heal this person whose legs didn't work properly and he doesn't heal that person? I don't know. My ways are not his ways. But what I do know is that his ways are perfect. I know that his love is you can't challenge it. It is absolutely real. It is for real. And he knows ultimately what is best for each person and the overall kingdom that he has created. And so there may be times when, or at the moment perhaps, maybe the healing comes later. Maybe it comes, after we've passed from this life to the next. He knows when that needs to happen.
Right. Yeah, he does. And I think one of the most common ground you can find as we're talking about, the Christian Men at Work podcast, how to live out your faith as a Christian. I've been in situations like that, being bivocational several times. I've been in a situation like that as teaching in a secular high school. That's the challenge. But I find that one of the common ground things is 3 words. 3 words.
Okay.
All right. I'll give you one guess. See if you know. Just a nice curveball, but trying to get back at you here. So one guess. What do you think those 3 words are?
Faith, hope, and love?
Sorry. Thank you for playing. Pick up the Wildman Steve consolation prize on your way out. Yes, the Wildman Steve Monopoly version, or whatever you want to say. No. What I was getting at was the idea of I don't know. And I think that as believers, and myself, even as a pastor, I was working bivocationally. Here I am stocking shelves as a pastor. So many people would treat me different because they found out I was a pastor, and they would ask me questions. And I found that when I started saying I don't know, that just stopped them in their tracks, because all of a sudden they're like, wait a minute, here's a guy who's saying that he doesn't know, and yet he's still following this God.
Right. Well, I think we've got, and this is true, it's certainly not even in the modern age. This is true across the board, and I think it's true at all age levels. I think even a 3-year-old, 4-year-old has this sense that I should know something, right? Something should make sense.
Oh, man.
Right?
That's what we're trying to do with our show.
Well, God has gifted us with reason and minds that are able to use logic and to think in rational ways. And so that's a very good thing, and has led to much good, especially in the realms of science and mathematics. And so we think that therefore applies to everything. And just as a child may not fully understand a parent's plans, same thing for the rest of us. Doesn't matter whether we're 35, 55, or 85 years old, we are still children with regard to our Heavenly Father. And we do not know everything, no matter how many degrees we have behind our names. We don't know everything, and we can't know everything.
Yes, but sometimes the frustration of not knowing, I'm going to hesitate on this one here, can put someone in a
frenzy. It just kind of makes you frenzied and just makes you want to dance wild and crazy, almost like a flamenco sort of thing.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, here is Galdius with the Flamenco Frenzy.